Welcome to the Performance Collective, where I bring together experts across the running, fitness, and human performance space to share insights, experiences, and practical strategies for improving performance. Hosted by me, Hannah Witt, a USCA certified running coach and athlete success and operations manager. This podcast features conversations with elite athletes, coaches, nutritionists, chiropractors, race directors, and industry leaders. Whether you're chasing a personal best, returning from injury, or looking to better understand the science behind training and recovery, the Performance Collective offers actionable insights to help you train smarter and perform at your best. Today's episode is a little bit different. Instead of me hosting, the founder of Maximum Mileage Coaching and my mentor, Nick Hancock, is hosting today's conversation with Jason Koop. Jason is one of the leading trail and ultra running coaches in the sport, known for developing elite athletes while still working closely with everyday runners. In this episode, they break down what actually drives performance, from simple, consistent training to the highly individualized strategies used at the top level. They also dive into how Jason is using AI in coaching, what it's already changing, and where he sees the future of the industry heading. It's a sharp, insightful conversation. I think you'll get a lot out of it. Let's get into it.
All right. So on today's episode, we've got somebody that I've had the pleasure of actually meeting in person and could call a mentor, both directly and indirectly. Directly from our time that we spent a few days in Colorado Springs a couple of years ago at the USCA coaching conference, but also indirectly because I've been an avid listener of your podcast, which I know you get bugs about. But I've got Jason Koop on today, generally regarded as one of the leaders, if not the leader in coaching in the ultra running space. So yeah, welcome, Jason.
Yeah, thanks for the nice intro. Always happy to provide a positive influence on people, especially in their coaching careers. And likewise, I really relish spending time with other coaches and helping them in areas that that they need, because that's something that was very, very fortunate in my coaching career that I'm trying to kind of pass forward or pay it forward, is I was just surrounded by really, really great coaches that I probably didn't deserve, and I certainly wasn't seeking out. And that is not lost on me, that has had a very big impact on my coaching career. And I would not be here where I'm at right now without those very early influences. So any way that I can pay that back across people who I've just met or people that I've known for many, many years, I'm always happy to do that.
Yeah, no, thank you for everything you've done. The USCA certification is it's the one that I've done. Is your ultra running one, and your book, the training essentials for ultra runners, was one of the first books I read, and still really the only, I would say, credible ultra running training book. There are others that people will know, but I just don't think they're that well grounded, particularly in the science, which you immerse yourself in quite a lot. So before we get into some of my questions, tell us a bit about yourself, Jason. There's going to be people that don't know who you are. So who are you?
I'm a trail and ultra running coach. I'm based currently in Chamonix, France. I was based for the first part of my coaching career, and the majority of my coaching career in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And the reason that's relevant is it's where the Olympic Training Center is. And we have a very rich legacy of everything's related to Olympic sports: coaching, physical therapists, massage therapists, exercise physiologists, sports psychologists, you kind of name it. They've all made a big imprint on that area, and that was very influential for me when I was a really young coach. I've spent my entire career doing everything that you could imagine around coaching. Started out as an intern when I didn't know anything about anything, and we were storing things on like floppy disks, and we built our own coaching tools, and I helped software developers build coaching tools. And ironically enough, I'm kind of like rediscovering that role 25 years later. I've managed coaches. I've created coaching pipelines to screen, evaluate, onboard and continually mentor coaches. I've developed coach education materials like you've experienced with USCA. I've created camps of all different, sizes and shapes, and running and mountain biking and things like that. I've managed coaching locations across the U.S., probably trained over 100 endurance coaches and cycling and running mainly. And now I find myself as the head coach of our ultra running department. So I've kind of like gone from this big wide scope where I worked with a lot of different kinds of athletes down to a very narrow specialty scope. And now I would say I'm mainly focused on developing a lot of the elite ultra runners in the space. I still do have maybe 50% of my portfolio. It's everyday runners, like the people who are listening to this podcast. That tends to shift more and more kind of like every year into this kind of elite spectrum. So it's been a ride. I could say I've done a lot, but I'm going to still continue to do more.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so who have you currently got on your books in terms of elites? What names are people going to recognize?
I mean, Katie Scheid, Abby Hall, who are the last two Western States champions. Katie Scheid is also the UTMB champion and current course record holder, trail and ultra run of the year for the last couple of years. Fujiao Zhang, who's runner-up at Western States the last 2 years. Germain Granger, Katie Scheid's partner, also coach him. Yeah, it's and I could, I mean, those probably come to the top of mind. I could kind of keep, rolling down the Rolodex there. But I'll say I've been very fortunate that like I continue to have athletes come and want me to help them out. And now I'm in a position. We built up a kind of a coaching portfolio that's strong enough to where it doesn't have to be just me. I'll only take on maybe one new athlete every 12 or 18 months. And, I probably get maybe 20 elite athlete inquiries, and all of those are going to our network of coaches who are doing a fantastic job with them right now. So it's, like I said, it's been a ride, something I never really experienced. Now it's not only me, it's kind of like other people, and I'm here for it all. It's fun.
Yeah, no, certainly at the moment, Katie Scheid is certainly a big name to have on the books. Before we get into some of the questions, I do have one question. Are we ever going to see Katie versus Courtney?
Yeah, that's up to them. Like I don't get into all that types of banter or the fantasy free trail stuff or stuff like that. If they end up meeting each other, then great. If that's their desire to have, some big epic showdown, that's amazing. One thing I will say, like relative to that's been really cool to kind of like witness from the inside is that at least with the people that I work with, they all want to race against the best. Like they want more of like a unified championship, so to speak, which really doesn't exist. And I wouldn't say that's the case with every elite athlete. That's the case with the elite athletes that I work with, where they're only interested in kind of like competing against the best. They want the best people to line up to, the best versions of those people to line up with and kind of do battle with. And I think that that's really neat, and who knows? I mean, the world wants Katie versus Courtney. Who knows if the Cosmos will kind of like line up that way? But it's certainly not up to me.
No, of course. I mean, they've got to both be, signing up to the same race, at the same points in their careers and peaking for them. So, but yeah, no, it's certainly a question that I'm sure gets floated around the internet.
Yeah, I don't participate in any of that. I know that there's a lot of banter about it, and people every once in a while ask me my opinion on it. And I'm here to support the athletes. I'm not here to create entertainment or anything like that. I just want athletes to win races and be the best versions of themselves.
Yeah, of course. Cool. So, with your experience of working with elites, I'd really love to sort of hear about what elite athletes that you have, what they're doing, and what they're doing that perhaps the everyday runner isn't doing, but probably should, because there's particularly in my coaching, I get asked about so many things that, quite frankly, are distractions from the real work. So yeah, I'd love to hear from sort of, how are you positioning that with your elites, and how can that then filter down into the everyday athlete?
Well, I mean, 90% of all of the performance gains that you're going to get are the boring day-to-day scheduling stuff. And I hate to say that that's the case with the elite athletes. It's the case, probably even 99% with the everyday athletes. And, it means just putting together a reasonable periodized plan that has enough overload and then has enough recovery. It kind of is as simple as that. Like, all the different variations of workout and intensity structure and interval design and periodization this and block periodization that, they can all work to some degree or another when they're deployed at kind of at the individual level. But fundamentally, 90% of it is going to get accomplished by very simple overload and recovery principles. Now, when you get like in the elite level, the things that they really that the vast majority of them, especially the elite athletes with really good counsel around them, or who are very good at being self-coached, and there's a whole variety of that exists today. The thing that they really excel at is taking those fundamental principles and individualizing them to themselves. So either the coach individualizes it to the athlete, or they individualize it to them. And that falls along every single line that would make an impact in performance. So that's the training, it's the strength training, it's the psychology, it's the nutrition, it's even like the annual planning and what races do you go to and things like that, and how that all wraps into a cohesive program. That's starting to make a bigger and bigger separation within the elite field. You're starting to see that, and the best elite athletes and the ones that have made kind of like the biggest jumps in performance are typically doing those things the best. They're typically doing things like they're heavily scrutinizing, it's usually their weakest point. They're heavily scrutinizing their weakest point. Let's say it's nutrition or hydration. We just had a continuing ed with the fine folks over precision hydration, so it's kind of top of mind to me right now. They're looking at that one particular component in their arsenal of things that they can improve on, and they're hyper individualizing it to themselves through testing and science and bringing on good people to help kind of scrutinize the data and build big plans for them. So I kind of view it as this like two-stage approach, right? Where the fundamentals of training get you about 90% there, and then the last 10%, it's individualizing those components to the person that's in front of you across all these different levels.
Yeah. And how can an everyday athlete sort of take some of that into their own minds and go, well, right, so put some of these distractions to the side. How can I look at my own training, and how can I actually recognize my own weaknesses and then put some action in place to remedy those?
Yeah, I honestly think the first part of that inventory is just to look at how you can do more volume. Volume is the best hammer that you have. It's the best tool in the toolkit that you have for an endurance athlete, and in particular, an ultramarathon athlete. And I'm not saying that you should wield that to the greatest extent, because there comes an injury risk with that. But if you take an inventory of your whole life, essentially, not only just your training schedule, but your whole life, and let's say you're doing 8 hours a week, right? If you can say, well, I wonder if I could do 9 hours a week or 10 hours a week, or wonder if we're getting 10 hours next week and then 8 hours the week after that. Somehow take that inventory and figure out how to do a little bit more volume. That's the easiest, most nonsense way that you can reap additional improvement. And very unfortunately, that's not the way most people are thinking. Most people are thinking, well, I need to, take XYZ supplement, or I need to redesign my intensity paradigm to fit this, certain thing. And yes, sometimes those things can work, but not nearly as powerful as just simply doing more volume. And just to give you a very real time example, I've done dozens and dozens and dozens of these debriefs with athletes, very, very good athletes, the best of the best of the best of the world that we just kind of like mentioned, where we take many years of training, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of training, and we scrutinize what's gone on. Where are you performing very well, and where are you performing at your best, and where are you performing poorly and at your worst? And in almost every single instance of, here's a really breakout performance, here's a key performance, here's a cluster of performances that are in the top 5% of what you've ever done. In almost every single one of those instances, the training concept that has preceded that is some component of additional volume. Maybe it's overall volume, maybe it's clustered long run volume, maybe it's some other way that you can kind of contrive it, but that's been the consistent theme. And like I said, it's not that you have to like do super high volumes all the time or anything like that. You absolutely need to periodize it. But if an everyday athlete is coming to me and saying, how can I improve? The very first thing that I'm going to do is like, let's take an inventory of everything and see if we can get an extra 10% volume increase, weekly volume increase on like a quarter of all of the weeks that you do. 10, 15 weeks out of the entire year. Let's see if we can bump those weeks up by 10% somehow. And then don't do anything else, as long as you're not doing anything really dumb. Like, and then just like, don't do anything else and like, let that play out over a long period of time. It's as surefire of a way that you can get to get a little bit of improvement that I could possibly prescribe anybody.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I talk all the time about not doing crazy high volume as an everyday athlete. You can't be going out and doing a 25-mile long run on a Tuesday morning. And then, and then you've got to sort the kids out and go straight to work. There does come a point, but I often look at an athlete's plan and go, right, can we get on a Wednesday where you are doing nothing at the moment, can we get a 40-minute easy run in on that week? And if you do that over the course of a 12-month period, 52-week period, that's a lot of extra hours of running. That total volume over time is going to make a difference.
Yeah, if you really wanted to like drill down the priority of that, right? Not to be too counter to that particular example. If you're looking at, if somebody's out there DIYing their training, or if their coaches out there kind of like listening to this, and you want to start to deploy this volume proposition, the first thing you should, and if you're an endurance athlete, and in particular an ultramarathon athlete, I always have to have my caveats to these things, because ultimately somebody will like slide into my DMs and said, well, you said this, that, and the other on Nick's podcast. And I'm like, well, yeah, I should have caveated that. Usually it's me making the mistakes. So anyway, all the caveats aside, I think your first order of priority is how do you make the biggest things a little bit bigger, or do more of them? So let's just say you're capped out at a 3-hour long run for whatever reason, and you're going to do 3 of those in advance of your key race. How could you do 4? Like, let's just figure out, how could you do like 1 more, or how could you make half of those 3-hour runs 3.5 hours? Because there is a compounding effect as you start to go up in duration, to where 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4 from an adaptive perspective. One 4-hour run is usually more valuable than 2 2-hour runs when you compare. In the literature shows this pretty clearly. When you can concentrate the workload in any way, whether you're concentrating volume or you're concentrating the intensity, usually the adaptations are superior. So that's the first thing, is just trying to make the bigger things bigger, just kind of like do more of them. Second thing is to just bring the whole average up. Like, how do we bring the whole average up? Either by a mechanism that you mentioned earlier, we're going to take these days and do 60 minutes, or we're going to turn your 60-minute runs into 90 minutes, more consistently. That's kind of the second tier. And then I would say, as a parallel exercise, and this is once again more particular to the ultramarathon crowd than anything else, is look at your calendar and figure out when you can really hyper concentrate some training blocks and do like a DIY training camp, or go to an actual training camp that actually somebody puts on. We put on these fantastic ultra running training camps in the US, maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And most athletes in between, they either double or triple their volume, somewhere in between there. It's just 3 or 4 days long. So if you take like the average of what they're doing in a week and the average over those 3 days, they usually kind of triple it. And when you look at it on paper, it kind of looks preposterous, right? Like you're going from a 2-hour run to a 8-hour run all of a sudden, right? Or 2-hour run to a 6-hour run all of a sudden. Like you're like, whoa, like you're scrutinizing
that's more than 10%.
Yeah, that's way more. That's way more than 10%. Yeah. You're scrutinizing that from a coaching perspective. Some red flags should go off. But when you're able to get in this like isolated environment and strip away maybe not all of the other stressors, but the vast majority of them, your body's just more receptive to work. And so looking at that as a separate like project, especially in the ultra marathon perspective, I would take that as another task.
Yeah, that is something I've learned from you directly is that particularly recce's, going to recce in a course, go and spend 3 days up in the Lake District or North Wales or wherever it is in the world you're doing your race, and take a few days off work. You don't have to think about work. You don't have to think about the kids. All you are doing is thinking about being out there in the mountains, fueling, and you can get that extraordinarily crazy amount of extra time on feet, like you say.
Yeah, extra time on feet. You also like garner a lot of confidence. It's one of the few training venues where you can really work on your race day nutrition program because the duration is so long. Like so many good ways to do it. Plus they're fun. Like
yeah.
You get out of the house, you get away from your job for a couple of days, you get away from yard work that you're doing, whatever home project.
You get away from the kids. You get away from the
kids. Like all the due respect to kids and people like their kids and all that. But it's like there's a litany of reasons. There's a whole milieu of reasons to go and do these things. I do think that they can be quite effective. And once again, up and down the chain. Like I do this with my professional athletes, where they do a really concentrated block of volume. They've got all the time in the world. That is their job, but it's the same principle. Same principle applies as we kind of isolate it. Rest going into it, rest going out of it. It's a big concentrated piece of volume. It might be 2x. I'll tell you guys this just as an anecdote, managing a lot of professional athletes. Even the professional athletes look at the jump in volume when they do those things and they kind of get like, whoa, like that's a lot. But then once they do it, they're like, oh yeah, okay, I can do this. And then they do it again. They're like, okay, I can do it again. Then they do it again. Okay, I do it again. So don't be afraid of it. Key is just, like I said, isolating it and making sure that you've got enough space to handle the bump.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. So just a couple of takeaways from that. Look at your diaries, folks. Look at like where can you get that little bit of extra from? I think you probably agree with this. Most people's easiest win is looking at your screen time on your phone. Totally. How much time are you spending on your phone?
It's a big one. Yeah.
Cool. So, subject number 2, and this was actually something you suggested us talk about because it is everywhere at the moment. You can't go a day without hearing about AI. And you've mentioned about where you're potentially using AI, or you are using AI in your coaching practice. So I'm keen on a personal level to hear this, but I'm sure plenty of people will be keen to hear about how you're utilizing AI. Because I know there are still a lot of people that will jump on ChatGPT and say, hey, I've got a 100-miler in 20 weeks. What do I do? It's gotten better. I must admit it's gotten better. But yeah, how are you using AI?
Well, let me back up a little bit with like the origin story of this all. Because I do think that there's a kind of a learning lesson in this. We mentioned how long I've been doing this for. So I've seen cycles, right? And these business and athletic cycles, they never repeat, but they always rhyme. And I've seen enough of them to kind of recognize that this is one of those ones that might actually rhyme. So maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I was invited to be kind of a domain expert. It's calling myself that, but a domain expert in a business coaching conference. So imagine what we do as athletic coaches, as running coaches. There's a parallel to that in the business world where they're working with mainly C-suite level people and helping them do their jobs better, just like we help athletes, run better races and stuff like that. Yeah. So anyway, I was invited to kind of share my domain expertise in a parallel industry at this thing. And one of the topics that they talk about, once again, remember the time frame here is maybe 6 or 7 years ago, if my memory is serving me correctly. One of the topics that was coming around is AI is coming around the corner. The big bad machines are all going to take our jobs. And there was maybe 3 hours of programming, this whole 3-day conference kind of around that. And the overriding tone of the discussion and coming from the participants was fear. Like, I'm going to find a way to dismiss this right off the bat because there's no way that I'm going to have my job replaced. That's a natural, like, human reaction. I've learned that whenever fear exists in a marketplace, there's usually some sort of opportunity. And this was earlier, maybe not the earliest, but earlier stages of some of the AI technology, which, at least to me, became very apparent that it was going to be transformative technology across the board. So instead of being like fearful of it, I said, okay, how I'm going to see if I want to play ball. Like, let's just try to figure it out. I'm not an expert in this, but my MO, and I'm not an expert in really anything, but my MO especially I'm really far out of my depths, is I go and I try to find experts.
Yeah.
And so I spent maybe about 18 months or 2 years kind of doing that, networking, like I always do. And I just happened to be introduced to a business partner who he and I are developing one of my products right now, Benevolencia. And he just happened to be in Bali at the time. And we organized this Zoom call. We get on the Zoom call. And this kid's on the beach in Bali with his shirt off, and there's a beach volleyball game going on in the background, and some kids building sandcastles around him. I'm like, this is the guy that I'm supposed to meet to show me the way through this artificial intelligence technology and how coaching can integrate into it. Like, this is this guy with his shirt off in Bali. And so we start this meeting. This is there's a whole point with this. I promise I'm getting there. So we start this meeting and he's like, wait, you wrote a book, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, can you get me a PDF copy of that book? I'm like, yeah, sure. And I sent him it like in real time in this meeting. He's like, just give me like 2 hours. Okay. This was 4 years ago. Okay. My book had not been out for that long. So I give him my book in a PDF copy. I go back to my coaching things. He pings me really quick. He's like, hey, come back. In 2 hours, he had wired one of my books into one of the early LLMs and shaped it. I'll use that terminology to keep it simple, and shaped it to a certain extent. And he said, well, what's the last question that you answered for one of your athletes? And I was like, oh, I built them a nutrition plan for the Western States 100. And he's like, oh, okay, great. So he pulls up his terminal, which is very, this very code looking, not very fancy, no UI, UX or anything like that, because he only had 2 hours. And he types into it. He's like, who was this athlete? And I gave them a profile athlete. It's like, can you build a training or can you build a nutrition plan for the Western States 100? And using only my book as the source material and shaping that to how he wanted to shape it, it gave me an answer that was maybe 95% close to what I had actually done in 2 hours. So it was at that point where I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to play ball here.
And that's not just 2 hours for creating the nutrition plan. That's 2 hours of actually building
the tool to create
then create it.
Yeah, exactly. And so we went through a few more iterations, but that was the real marquee one. It's because I had just done it for an athlete. It was, and what this person had created was so incredibly representative of what I would do. And I'm not going to go into like all the detail of how representative was, but it was very, very good. Obviously wasn't perfect. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to play ball. And so since then, we've been kind of working on two parallel tracks. Is one to essentially build an agent of me that acts like me in a coaching capacity. So athlete comes in, the agent onboards them, the agent builds the program, the agent analyzes the training, the agent communicates with the athlete just like I would communicate with the athlete, modifies the training in a way that I would modify the training, creates the long range plan, counsels the athlete when they have a crisis of confidence, like all of those things that I do as a coach, tries to emulate that to the best of its capacity. That's one agent, and that's a live product now. People can go to it, but that's been the workhorse behind there. And I'm super happy with where that's at. And there's going to be other iterations of that. I'm not the only one kind of doing it. There's hundreds of it right now in the athletic space. But the other piece of it is how individual coaches can leverage this to enhance their coaching pipeline, so to speak, how they deliver coaching. And if you think about coaching fundamentally, we're kind of doing three things, right? Prescribing training, we're analyzing training, we're communicating with athletes. Where along those three delivery points in working with athletes are there friction points that you can use enhanced technology to alleviate your workflow? And there's something along all of those. And I'll give something that's just I've built over the last, it took me like 2 days to build, which is crazy. The speed is incredible. So one of the things that you'll probably recognize as a coach that is time consuming and also very imperfect to analyze is sentiment through post-activity comments. That is I have requested this of Training Peaks, which is the training platform that we use. You're wearing Training Peaks hat.
I'm wearing the hat, yeah.
And I've requested this of them. I can't tell you how many times, and I get denied every single time. I want the post-activity comments to be the first thing I see in the email, not the hero data. They flip it around where it's the hero data first. It's like time, power, pace, elevation gain. That's the first thing you see, and then the post-activity comments are second. I want to customize it so the post-activity comments are first. And the only reason I'm mentioning that is I place them at a higher value. Now, the hard part with that is when you're managing a portfolio of athletes, you have a stream of sentiment coming into your inbox. And when you have, 20, 40 athletes, reasonable athlete load, and you're trying to analyze sentiment, not only on that one day, but on the last 3 or 4 or 5 days, which actually becomes meaningful. It's just like a training input. It's not one single thing that's usually the impulse. It's usually 5 or 6 things that are kind of like adding up to show you the direction arrow. It's hard. And we want athletes to put in as much, it's their training log. We want them to put in as much context as they absolutely can. Weeding through that sentiment, I hate to use a negative term here, but I'll emphasize it for the coaches that are out there that are listening. Weeding through that sentiment to find signal is extraordinarily difficult, yet very valuable. And every coach out there is giving me a nod right now. So anyway, I'm like, how am I going to solve for this filter? So I built a sentiment dashboard that exists outside of Training Peaks that takes a 3-day rolling average of an athlete's sentiment and boils to the top the things that I need to pay attention to. It racks, and that's something you can't do in Training Peaks right now. I can't flag for sentiment and elevate the things that I need to respond to the top. It does a remarkably good job of doing that. Now, that doesn't help me coach more people. It doesn't help me scale the business. I'm not looking at it from an economic perspective, but it does help me be more insightful on tying an athlete's post-activity comment, the verbal feedback that they're actually giving in their post-activity comment, to what's actually going on in the data. It gives me an enhanced way of scrutinizing that because I can spend more of my time focusing on the sentiment that is boiling up to the surface. I couldn't do that without integrating I use Claude Cowork, just to be transparent. I could not do that without integrating an AI agent into that is sifting through all this, because I've been a coach for 25 years, and I know I miss sentiment. I know it. I know it. And I'm not saying that this makes that miss rate 0%. Like, I know that I'm still going to miss things through sentiment, either through a byproduct of me not reading everything, or reading everything carefully enough, or the filter not working perfectly, or whatever. But it makes it light years better than a linear look at sentiment where everything is prioritized equally. That's the improvement that I just now created, is that instead of looking at all the pieces of sentiment and trying to rack it, stack it myself, I have a high pass filter that it goes through first, and it tells me how to reorganize and rack and stack the things. And I absolutely, like, maybe somebody's going to be out there like saying this is like a squeaky wheel theory or whatever. Like, the athletes that have, some flag within their sentiment over the past few days, I immediately prioritize and I jump on communication with those athletes. Like, immediately, because it's like, hey, let's fix this. Do we need to change training? Do we need to give you less? Like, kind of like whatever it is. And the opposite is also true.
Yep.
If everything is like rolling and being perfect, then you might want to add a little bit more load, but it's more often kind of the former case. So that's just one, right? That's just kind of like one thing within my coaching practice. There's maybe a dozen or so more of these specialty like tools that I've built over the past like 6 months that vary in the use cases. Some of them are very this athlete sentiment filter is the one that I bring out first, because I use that across everybody. Everybody gets that. It's the first thing I check every morning. That's how valuable it is, dude. The very first thing when I sit down and coach, I look at the athlete sentiment thing. It helps me organize my day. But there's maybe a dozen or so tools that I've always wanted as a coach. I've begged Training Peaks for them for years. I love the guys over at Training Peaks, but they're making a tool for everybody, not a tool for me. Right? Yeah. That's part of the bargain you get with software. Is you get software for everybody. You don't get software for yourself unless you build it for yourself. There's maybe a dozen of these like little widgets that I built that have always been problems that I have wanted to solve for, but I did not have the skill nor capacity to do it. And now I've got a tool that gives me the skill and capacity. That's the undeniable piece. Is you have a tool out there that's remarkably powerful that you can choose to wield in any number of different ways. And if you know how to wield it correctly, you can turn that expertise, you can turn that know-how into better prescription, better precision, better analysis for each individual athlete. And that's what I've kind of been focused on building off to the side, so to speak, is this suite of tools that I can deploy within my own coaching practice.
Yeah, I have done something similar. So with my weekly feedback form that I send out to my athletes, which I send out via Google Forms, which is very cumbersome when it comes through all the spreadsheets. Like, how do I read this? That's what I built myself as a script that then takes that weekly feedback, and it then looks back through that sentiment over previous weeks, and then it says, right, okay, so over the last 4 weeks, Matthew has said these things. There's a trend, whatever it might be. And, oh, right, okay, I might not have seen that on a one weekly basis. Just like you, there's those opportunities to maybe see things on a trend basis that perhaps you wouldn't have seen just from reading, individual messages or, those individual check-ins at that particular time. So that's how I've been using it. And it is great because you can just jump on Cord and say, hey, here's my feedback forms for the last 4 weeks. What are you seeing? What can I pick out? And then I look at the data on Training Peaks and go, right, okay, so Matthew has said he's feeling a bit tired, right? I can see why we've been building up his volume, but that's okay. Let's cut him back this week. Whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of flip it around a little bit and like turn this into like a little bit of a dialogue that maybe we can go back and forth on. So I mentioned earlier, like one of my roles is I mentor and I train a lot of coaches, and I've really enjoyed that, or very, very, very much enjoyed that role throughout my coaching career, because I get a lot out of it. I grow a lot I grow a lot as a coach out of helping other coaches. It absolutely makes me better. Is how do we take early stage coaches and teach them how to use these tools? Because it's not like teaching somebody how to use a power meter in cycling, for example, right? Which is an analytical tool that, you know, tells you how many kilojoules they're producing, how many watts they're producing. This is a tool that like can help be a shortcut, right? And with any shortcut, you're shortcutting at the expense of development with a young coach, right? So you make them do the work, or you give them a shortcut to the work. And so we're trying to balance this, like internally with our new coaches that are like coming on, because part of the reasons that I can use and I can leverage a lot of the AI models is because I know the right questions to ask, and I also know how to guardrail it. But I've only developed that over, and I'm not perfect at either one of those, but I'm only reasonably good at it through my experience. If you don't have that experience, you're going to get siphoned off into not developing because you're having something else do the work for you. But you're subject to a lot of error. As a really practical point of this, I'm not using ChatGPT or Claude, which are the main tools that I use. I'm not using them in isolation. I've kind of like armored them up with my body of work that acts as guardrails, so to speak, and tone references to make sure that the information that I'm getting is of the highest quality possible. It's sourcing the right information. It's the way that I've kind of like learned to, you know, use the data and manipulate the data and things like that. And I literally call it my knowledge spine. And it took me a long time to bring this together into something that one of the AI tools can actually make use of. But other people have that. I just happen to have a really big set of it, you know. That's the only reason that I can, that's not the only reason, but it's the biggest reason that I can put a lot of trust in the work that I'm handing over to this digital agent right now, is because I've kind of like given it these guardrails of institutional knowledge that has been written down and presented on and things like that I've had throughout my coaching career. I wouldn't have that same confidence if I was just, and I've done this actually, if I was just using ChatGPT without that. I would not do that as a coach, because I've tried doing that independent of giving it guardrails, and I didn't like what I was getting. So there's a little bit of a cautionary tale for using this in practice as coaching is like, you can't use it to replace the work. You can use it to make your work a whole, you can use it to enhance your work. And if you so choose, you can use it to leverage your time better. And that's a personal business choice that everybody's going to have to go through. Like scale is very much part of the conversation with the technology itself, and it's always been a conversation within coaching. How do you scale yourself? I'm not going to get into the depths of that too much, but I guess my point with all that is like, you still do have to be really careful. And the way that I've been careful is I've kind of guardrailed the tools to a large extent.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's exactly what I've done as well. You know, I don't have as much coaching mileage behind me as you do, but you know, from my previous career of working in learning and development and coaching in the corporate side of things, that's the sort of approach I've taken with it as well. You can't just drop your weekly feedback form into ChatGPT or Claude. Hey, tell me all of this stuff. It does have to come with those.
People will do that, and I mean, every week I'm pointing my phone over here. Just this morning, I'd say every week, every day, I get fed a new AI coaching widget on Instagram that somebody's developed. And so there are other people out there that are like harnessing your data through Strava and or Garmin and or Sunto or whatever your GPS use choice of whatever is, using some of the AI tools to synthesize that information and coming up with programming for it. There are going to be any number of different attempts there, and my bet is the winners are going to be the ones who have a trusted methodology to scrutinize the data and provide actionable insights and advice with. That's the hard part, is taking because the AI models are harnessing the entirety of the internet.
Yeah.
Taking the entirety of the internet and figuring out how we're going to put a silo around the stuff that is the highest quality of information. My colleague Nick Tiller just produced a really, really good paper about this in the health and wellness space, where they tested, I think it was 250 health, wellness, and performance questions across several of the AI models. And the summary of it is they did a pretty shit job of producing good information. A lot of it was misinformation. A lot of it wasn't credible. And so I think it just goes to reinforce the point that, like, if you're an athlete out there and you want incredibly specific information for you, you've got to figure out how to like harness the entirety of the information that's out there and like tailor it down to that specifically for you. That's not an easy task. We're trying to chip away at it with some of the tools that we're building, and we're not the only ones. But I do think that there's some magic in that, to where you can leverage these technologies and have a lot of good come out of it.
Yeah. I think if you're not getting into using AI, you're not being. I actually saw quite a good post on LinkedIn yesterday. Somebody saying about, if you're not thinking AI first, you are going to get left behind. Not AI only, but
not only AI only. I mean, so to go through the cycle piece of it, right? So I went through the cycle during the power meter revolution in the early 2000s, and it's not exactly the same. It doesn't repeat, but it always rhymes. That's what I've always said. That's a very common phrase. It doesn't repeat, it always rhymes. And during the power meter revolution, they're absolutely 100%. It's crazy to think about this now, but anybody who's been coaching for over 25 years will remember this in cycling and in triathlon. There was a contingency of practitioners out there who were like, why would we adopt this technology? We already have heart rate. We have a very great gauge of intensity. Heart rate. We've used it for decades. We know all the training ranges. We know everything that there ever needs to be known about how to apply heart rate training for an athlete. Why would I switch over to a power meter? They're big, they're clunky, they're expensive, they're heavy. Like, it's the force at the level of the pedal and not really your physiological representation of the work. Like, you heard all the excuses in the world. And that was not a trivial amount of practitioners that were actually saying that. Fast forward, it didn't take more than like 4 or 6 years to weed all of that out. You were a dinosaur. You're an absolute dinosaur if you didn't adopt all that technology. That was one of the first big coaching projects that I had. Is I had our whole coaching staff be power meter literate. And that seems like now, like, well, of course you would have done that. In 2002, that was not. In 2002, when I did that across 50 coaches, which was a pretty big coaching staff at the time, that was not a universal thing at all, to have everybody be literate in using a power meter to prescribe and analyze training with the old SRN software. You guys can remember that back in the day. This has a similar signature where it's a tool that you can wield, and there will be people out there that said, well, we have all these other tools. Why don't we just continue to use them? Or here's the problem with this tool. The tools are going to get better. The AI tools have already gotten better, and remarkably so, way faster than the power meter. Way faster than the power meter. It's going to be something that is going to kind of like run away and run everything over at the same time. And if you're, as a coach and as an athlete, not thinking about how to intellectually and honestly harness that technology, you stand a good chance of getting run away from, just like everybody in the power meter revolution did in the early 2000s.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to ask you one last question.
Yeah, man.
Is AI going to replace human coaches?
I think to a certain extent, yes. So here's what always happens with technological revolutions is the bottom gets chopped off first.
Mhm.
So anytime there's any sort of efficiency leap in anything, kind of the bottom part of the fodder, with all due respect to these people, kind of the bottom barrel that are like using generic training plans and copy pasting things, and the generic training plans are going to go away first. Let's just think about that as an extension of coaching.
Yeah,
right.
My Training Peaks marketplace is dead.
It'll die. And that's fine. It served its purpose for 50 years. It'll eventually die or go to 1% or kind of like whatever it is. Now, if you go kind of like the next step up from the training plans to the coaches who are using training plans and passing it off as coaching, that'll be the next kind of like piece to go. Then the AI will get better and it'll replace whatever you consider the next level, and then on and on and on. I do think that like there's always going to be a place for human to human interaction in some form, but when you're talking about a service type of marketplace, and you have these technological revolutions, the people who are the best at that service end up being the people who not only survive but thrive. The people who can create unique value through whatever type of service they actually have. In our case, it's coaching. So I do think that it's going to slowly replace the coaching, and the way it's going to replace coaching is kind of from the bottom up, kind of working its way through all of those different levels. And I think that that's an improvement, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're gonna find cases, and those are the research that I just pointed out from Nick is a great example of this. You're going to find cases where ChatGPT gives somebody a terrible marathon training program. That is absolutely going to happen. But you know what? I can find human coaches that are giving people terrible marathon training programs as well. Yeah. So you have to kind of like understand that like terrible training already exists with humans delivering it. So don't use that as the scapegoat for like, oh, we shouldn't adopt this technology. We shouldn't trust it. There's already bad stuff out there. Anyway, so to answer your question, yes, it'll be from the bottom, kind of going to the top though.
Yeah, agreed. Good to see you. Thanks so much.
Good to see you too. Yeah, of course.
And, I'll see you soon.
Yeah, Nick, sounds good, man.